Hello and welcome to the dungeon. Dayman here. Today, I have a special video because you can look right up there. Your boy's been double prestige for a while now, but I've been waiting to release this video until I had a brain full of information to help you guys make the most informed decisions on picking your mythical weapons. We're going to go up here and start our re-prestiging process. And while they go through that long video, I will be discussing some of the tips that I've learned about general prestiging, and then we'll talk about how each and every one of these weapons works in-game without speculation. So, many people might have wondered if you can get the same weapon. I know many people want to have double daggers. Guess what? You absolutely can pick the same weapon twice. So you can get 2 daggers, 2 hammers. You could boom, boom, clearing out waves, keeping them staggered. So this is going to go through its big, long, oh, you're such a good explorer. Here's our little treats for you, boy. But when it comes to picking your prestiging weapon, the perks that you pick are really going to matter for what makes a dungeon run feel that much more fluid. So let's get the nitty-gritty out of the way. Critter damage. Critters have the lowest HP in the game, most often just 1 HP or just barely more than that. So you can ignore critter damage on all of your weapons. Okay? And I know many of us have believed that this shield was going to work as another weapon. Unfortunately, this shield, despite being able to be thrown and be more effective in that regard, and you might be able to pick up a kill in lower tier dungeons, the damage that it does is 1 damage. So, okay, you got attack power and crits on it. Guess what? You're really only doing like 3 damage with your shield. So I wanted to pick up that shield because I was hoping that shield was going to work as a 4th weapon. Pairing that with Juggernaut. That bubble has been burst. That doesn't make the shield bad. The shield is still great, but you're probably going to be better off picking absorb and knockback distance as opposed to any of the aggressive perks here. So these really are the only two perks for the shield that are going to make it viable. Okay, and again, you can get as many throws off as you can during that charged period. It's not just 3. So as long as you charge that weapon, and guess what? Every single charge weapon has the exact same period by which it is charged and the same period by which it is cooling down, which appears to be about a 10-second cooldown and 10-second use of your charge. So when it comes to many of the thrown weapons, the speed by which you can throw your weapons or fire your weapons is what is going to matter. But that's not true for all weapons as we go forward and discuss. Now, when it comes to the bow, you might even be able to tell within this. When you stick it into an enemy, it has a delayed fuse. However, if you want to be able to get the most out of your mythical bow, what you are going to do is take that bow and fire it at their feet or at a hard target in which it will cause an instantaneous explosion. Now, when we talk about bows, slowing is one of the most important things you can put on a bow because it'll affect bosses, making those fights far more easier. Attack power is also pretty useful in the bow because the bow has one of the lower, not the lowest, but has a lower attack power than some of the other weapons. Talking a little bit more about damage types. Sorcerer damage. There are not many sorcerers in the game. You have the mages, you have the uber mages, and maybe one other caster type in the game. So not really what you want to be looking for your damaging types. And guess what? Oh, you might think that, well, there are boss insects, right? Yeah, you might be getting the wasp with the critter, but that's really the only thing you'd be getting that for is the wasp. And they slowed it down and made it, they can summon 1 HP critters. Monster damage. That gigantic scorpion boss is considered a monster type enemy, not a critter type enemy. So you're not even getting 2 bosses. So monster damage will be affecting more enemies than critical and sorcerer. Elemental damage, by the way, that elemental damage is for the colorful enemies. Orange for fire, green for poison, and blue for ice, which all enemy types after this update have that. Crossbow. Now, I was very interested in learning about how many shots you actually get. You do get 8 shots from your crossbow, but you also get a charge period by which you can fire off another 4 shots. So it equates to about a 12-shot crossbow, but you have to reload with that charge. So you're still, you only get 4 additional shots off of your crossbow. So it is a 12-shot now. They updated that. Now, if you look, it shoots a blade. Okay, that blade has collision, meaning you will not be able to successfully shoot through smaller windows or grates. So keep that in mind with your charge shot. That is for clearing out close together enemies, more so than trying to get those more precision shots for your 12-shot chargeable crossbow. Once again, it's one of the weapons that has a limited attack within its charge period, only being 4 instead of how many you can fire, which would have been dope. Longsword. I was able to provide one of the primary tips within that initial video, as being able to consolidate those spires at a wall, as they will all clump together once they hit a hard target. However, they will go through pillars and they will go through grates. So keep that in mind when you are trying to get those shots pushed together. And as we see, the enemies here are getting instantly destroyed, but more powerful enemies will get knocked straight up into the air. So let's talk a little bit about perks. We're going to shoot back to crossbow perks. Slowing, again, massively important. And attack power. I recommend attack power 100% for the crossbow because of its multi-shot nature. It has the lowest maximal attack power. Though all mythical weapons have a higher attack power than their base versions, it maxes out at about 170 for the most powerful weapons, though we're probably looking at barely 50 for our crossbows. So getting that 20 to 30% more damage on your attack power is going to really come in handy for your crossbow. Now, undead damage. Undead damage is one of the most useful damage types that you can get on most melee weapons, because undead enemies are present within all dungeons. So if you are going for a monster type damage, pick that undead damage. Elite damage can also be quite useful, though again, it's more niche than undead. Talking about perks for the longbow, and once again, I'd recommend attack power and slowing. Longsword. This is where you get some more interesting options. Now, what makes the longsword a great pick is the ability to get slightly more options to pick from. Knockback distance. Wow. When you get knockback distance paired with the knockback exo, you're literally sending them into orbit. Do be careful, however, as you can sometimes glitch enemies through walls and making clearing certain rooms a bit more challenging. So be careful where that knockback distance is going. Something you're going to see a lot with this. Now, attack power might not, unless you're trying to go for the most powerful weapon in the game. Attack power isn't the most pertinent on your longsword because it is the highest damaging mythical weapon. So, unblockable, unblockable, unblockable. If I almost say unblockable is a needed perk for the Greatsword, because you're just going to carve through enemies. And you can pair unblockable with Vampire in order to stay in the fray and be able to fight through those hordes while just constantly gaining the health. But unblockable unblockable knockback, I mean, you're dang old Tiger Woods out there. Nothing is going to stand against you. Stab damage, again, pretty useful, but I don't see a lot of people going for the stab. I see people going for the swing, and it's really how it's designed to get those chambered attacks. Unblockable criticals, also pretty good. Maybe you, again, if you want to be attack power criticals and just be the one-hit wonder in the dungeon, feel free, right? There's a lot more options with the longsword. However, it is a one and done. So really think about when you're charging that weapon up and then go in for it. And it's going to take time to learn just the spacing with those attacks. But as we can kind of see in the video, as enemies walk towards you, it's far more likely. So make sure far more likely to hit. So make sure that you are the one that has the enemy's aggression locked on you so that you can get the most utility out of that one and done attack. And again, it's a 10-second cooldown, so keep that in mind. The spear, my baby boy, how I love you. Now, the spear, we discussed it a little bit more in my video because it's one I picked. You can get up to 30 shots trifold. Now, this damage is very, very low. It's pretty much fireball damage, if you're familiar with how the fireball staffs work. Now, this is all about distance management. It's not going to shred through enemies unless you're doing lower tier dungeons. Okay, it can take out like swarms of enemies. So if you're doing low tier swarms, this thing is golden. If you're trying to take out multiple weak spots on a golem, this is going to pick that thing apart, dropping it to its knees, allowing you to move in with your attacks, right? Going in, take those strikes off. Now, the spear, when you look at its perks, explosions, throw damage, throw distance, criticals, and attack power, some of these being unique, right? Explosions being unique, it's niche. I went explosions and criticals myself. I have 167, and I have no regrets about this weapon. I love this weapon, but if I were to do it all over again, I might have actually gone attack power, because there's times in a dungeon where I get my weapon and I throw it into a boss and they live on just a sliver. But here is some hidden tech. I've had a lot of time with this bad boy, so I can tell you something quite unique about this. When you charge it up, and once it's charged, you don't have to do that blast. Instead, you go and charge up that weapon, and once it's charged, the minute you throw it, it feels like it goes a little bit faster, but the main thing is that it will always auto-target the head. So you will always be able to get headshots within that period, increasing the damage of your thrown attacks. Thrown damage also paired with that is something to consider. Oh, now I can get headshots every time I charge this thing up, and I can increase the damage of my thrown weapons, and pairing that with the exo perk for thrown damage, you're going to just do serious damage to skeletal bosses, doomers, and even the pesky wasps that are so hard to hit. This thing locks them down with that charged throw. So it's not demonstrated here. They want to show us this beautiful spray damage, which again is about keeping enemies at bay, right? And by keeping them at bay, you can, keep someone rezzed at your feet. But this thing is really a javelin. This thing is really going to unlock its potential with thrown weapon perks. I don't really recommend throwing distance, as it's not going to come in handy, and I'm going to be going more in depth over some an exo video talking about all the exo points and how they really work. I know I just talked about all that throwness with the spear, but I would go more thrown damage. I love criticals. I love criticals. You're never going to hear me talk bad about criticals. But a thrown damage with attack power, wowie wowie, that is going to make this spear so much better. And if I could do it all over again, it's what I would do. Long sword. Oh, this thing is beautiful. Now, this is, again, another weapon kind of like the crossbow. It has a limited magazine. You get 5, they're only demonstrating 3 here, but you get 5 slashes with that during that charge period. So keep that in mind when you're using this. And if you look, the direction that you are slashing will create the direction of your blast. So think about that. You can even follow those up in creating lines of attack and completely mow down a front line. Now, those slashes, they're not going to be as powerful as the sword damage itself. So once again, Vampire is always a great thing to have on a weapon that you're going to be in a fight with, because you're going to be able to get some health back. If you're watching my videos, my advanced combat or how to fight, you're going to always want to keep that guard up. And with a guard and Vampire, boy oh boy, you're going to be staying in that fight a lot longer. Now, the longsword does not have as high of a damage potential as the greatsword, but it still has a pretty high damage potential. No reason not to go attack power, right? The way I look at undead damage as opposed to attack power, or like attack power as opposed to criticals, this is always on. You're always going to get about that 20% more damage, but criticals, getting that, like 200 or 300% damage, that's going to make this thing feel like a nuke at times. Now, throwable. All weapons are already throwable. The difference there is it targets a little bit better towards headshots, as well as having a slightly faster return than it otherwise would. So I wouldn't recommend it, but I'm not recommending it. I'm just talking about the fact that it makes that throwing ability feel a little more consistent. But I recommend always having a more balanced loadout anyways. So you're going to have thrown weapons. Stab damage might not seem like the thing you want to have on a sword, but if you're keeping that guard up, right? Here's another way of keeping guard. This is an aggressive guard. Right? If you're having another weapon in your offhand, now enemies walking towards you, if you've seen my advanced fighting tips video, enemies will run straight into the tip of your weapon, giving them the chance to deal damage passively. So things to consider, but I'm always going to be recommending that Vampire on your swords. The axe. Oh boy, do I have a tip for you. I am very, very tempted by the axe for my double prestige, and I'll tell you why. This shockwave, although it is single target, it will stay in place. Even once the enemy is dead, it'll stay in place for just a moment, and so anything that walks into that area of damage is still going to be taking the damage from the axe. So although it seems like a single target, it can still damage nearby or closer enemies. So really good in swarms as well. But here's the real tip. If you're dealing with golems or any enemy with weak points on their body, which can be denoted by these glowing orange on their bodies, that charge buzzsaw will destroy every single weak point on a golem's body, instantly dropping them to their knees, allowing your team to move in. So you don't have to wait to destroy every single spot. Maybe, I can't get the one on his back, I'll draw their aggression. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You got someone with a mythical axe, and you're running solos. By the way, that's the main reason I want to get this thing. It's because of solo run potential, being able to make mincemeat out of those boss monsters. Not only that, while an enemy is staggered, even if it's like a doomer or a beholder, what do they call them? Octolus. While they're staggered, you can be following up with thrown damage. So let's talk about this. Got explosions, throw damage, right? And again, we just talked about how useful it can be to throw this thing. Throw distance, niche, criticals, my baby, and attack power. The attack power on the axes is middling. So if you want to make this thing really feel mythic, attack power is one thing to look at. But explosions, okay? Now, I mentioned this is more of a single target weapon. So by equipping explosions to your axe and throwing it, suddenly this becomes more of an area of effect weapon instead of just a single target weapon. So a way of getting slightly more utility out of your axe. And throw damage, I know I use axes predominantly for their thrown ability and be able to kind of carve through at a distance, but daggers have kind of been taking my my heart in terms of my sidearm. So keep that in mind when picking the axe. And ooh boy, how I love you, Dagger. It's one of the most beautiful weapons in the game. It really is just a expertly crafted weapon. So this is only showing a single throw, and one of the reasons I was maybe less impressed by it initially. I did like that it was multi-target, and I thought that was maybe why it was one-shot. It's not. Once that dagger is charged, as often as you can throw that dagger is as often as that perk is going to go. And we know that daggers return to the person so much faster. And look at that. This is the only elemental type of damage that you can equip on any of your weapons. So poison is one of the things that make the dagger so much more unique. As you can see, I'm even running poison on my ice dagger, because that poison makes this thing effective against boss level monsters. And with that thrown, you might even be able to get those perks set off on additional targets. Again, I'm a big fan of Vampire. Throwing distance, I'm not really sold on throwing distance yet. If you have an argument for throw distance, leave it in the comments. I'm willing to hear it out. So, the attack power. Daggers are, again, a much lower damaging weapon than any others. So, poison and attack power might be what you're looking for. Okay, again, you can go with maybe the less consistent big blows of criticals, especially with how fast you can throw that weapon. Criticals isn't that bad of a choice. I know I'm tempted by this dagger myself, because you actually get as many throws as you can get off in that charge period, which is not as well demonstrated in this video. Oh, yes. Now, the first weapon I've ever seen someone double prestige and grab the same weapon of, it was this hammer. And I was kind of confused by that. But then I realized how awesome it is to have two hammers. Now, you decide where the battlefield is. And there's people on your friends? No, they're not. Now, this is showing it only hitting against the floor. But what I've learned, you can take that hammer and hit it against your own weapon like a shield, right? If you have a shield or another weapon, you can strike your weapon, and while they're moving in on you, say they're not close to you just yet, you can create your own target. This is also be able to be triggered with a throw. So it's not just affecting your own radius. You can now be protecting allies at a distance with that massive throw explosion. And talking about area of effect damage is pretty great. And the fact that you actually get slowing on a weapon that you can both throw and hit multiple targets with, boy, oh boy, this is something that you don't really see on a lot of weapons. It's a fairly unique perk. So slowing is something that's going to help you slow down bosses as mentioned. The damage on the hammer is pretty decent, but you can really start maxing it out with that attack power. I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but area of effect damage might seem a bit redundant, but remember, this is a one and done ability. So after that charge, boom, you get that singular use of it, which is why I saw somebody with double hammers, because it becomes something that is really worth the double prestige to get. So pretty cool. And again, you can kind of get a slightly more of that explosion and control with that slowing and area damage. Like I said, you determine the pace of the battle and where the battle is being fought with this hammer. So unlike the spear, where it's a lot more about managing distance as support, this is managing distance like a tank. And with that, we've come full circle with our weapons. Now, you've heard me discuss all my weapons, and maybe you have figured out which weapon I'm going to take. But I'm going to save that as a mystery for a future video. So look forward to seeing what weapon I pick. All right, I look forward to seeing you in the dungeon, and I'm hoping, now, if you've made it this far, which I hope you have, if you have double prestige, I want you to leave a comment below with your username. I want to host a dungeon with you. I want to get us some actual live play with these weapons, and so we can show the community what these weapons really can do. Until next time, I'm Dayman. Remember to disinfect your face mask and wash your face. Peace.